on. I'll do 30 seconds. Hello. Just testing. 1 2 1 2. Hello. Just testing. 1 2 1 2. Yeah, it works, but it's nothing. It's not clear on the phone, but that could just be the phone.
It's clear, yeah.
Yeah, it was clear.
It's clear, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the phone now.
Okay, try it on your phone.
No, maybe it's the. And you have a moment right?
Go there.
Which one?
Go there, because this is actually live.
Oh.
That's what I said. It's live now. That's what I said. It's live now. We're just testing technical difficulties. Thank you. Just testing technique. Is it clear on yours? Let me see. So I can just see my own eyes and then I know for real. Cool. Thank you. We are back in action. Have you missed me? It has been a while. We've got better equipment. So yeah, for the last couple of weeks, we had to use my kind of external webcam, which is good, but not the best quality. So you will see a difference. And we just had to get everything connected and stuff like that. It took a while, but we got there in the end. So for those that haven't seen me in a while, my name is Ngozi Cadmus. I'm a mental health and leadership expert, psychotherapist, social worker, and entrepreneur. And I am back with a vengeance, even though I'm going to have another break because I'm going to Dubai next week. Had a few weeks break because I had a TEDx and I was just mentally exhausted. The TEDx was amazing. The video will come out soon and you can watch it. And the behind the scenes will come out very, very soon. So, me, I want to get right into it. I am tired. So I want to just get right into today's topic about therapists. I'm a therapist. And yeah, I'm really interested in analyzing these two videos. Yeah, I'm quite interested in analyzing the two videos and essentially discussing, my thoughts on them. Oh, it does that. Okay, cool. So you can see that. So let me do this one first. I think this one will go and we can watch this one.
It should be an absolute baseline question in a therapy intake to ask somebody the last time they were wrong in a situation. Tell me about an interpersonal conflict where the other person was at least partially right. Because if a person cannot answer that question, therapy is just setting them up with the tools and the vocabulary to be worse. Listen, I love therapy. I love my therapist. I hope you haven't found my TikTok. But as therapy becomes destigmatized, it's led to a lot of people participating in it who just want to be able to put in their Hinge bio that they're in therapy and not actually do any of the real work. And listen, that's fine. Keep therapists in business, create space for yourself. But providing a bunch of people with the academic vocabulary to justify their own behavior at any cost in any context, it's creating a master manipulator generation. I fear we may be about to fly too close to the sun.
Let's hear it again.
It should be an absolute baseline question in a therapy intake to ask somebody the last time they were wrong in a situation. Tell me about an interpersonal conflict where the other person was at least partially right. Because if a person cannot answer that question, therapy is just setting them up with the tools and the vocabulary to be worse. Listen, I love therapy. I love my therapist.
So, I loved this video when I saw it. You know, when you see a video that explains your thoughts, because they're forced to do that in like 60 seconds, right? So they explain their thoughts succinctly, and I'm like, yeah, that would take me about 10 minutes to explain. So now I won't say she's right because there's a greater context, but let me explain when I saw this what this meant for me. How I understood this is that there are people that attend therapy who um when they attend therapy, they don't actually deal with unresolved issues, nor do they look to be a better version of themselves, a more improved version of themselves, and be more self aware. The whole point of therapy is to deal with unresolved issues, it is to be more self aware, it is to give you the power to take a different alternative choice. I can't make you as a therapist do anything different to what you normally do, but I can bring to your awareness that there are other alternatives. There's another alternative to going back to that abusive relationship. There's another alternative to reacting and fighting with your sister or friend because you were triggered. There are alternative options. The issue is with a lot of us, when we are feeling a certain way, when we are aroused, we are triggered, we only act from the options we always act in, the habitual maladaptive responses to the present situation based on trauma, or just based on habitual behavior is how we respond, right? There are some people that I guess go into therapy and are affirmed and leave therapy thinking that the way they speak to people, the way they are, the way they act is okay because their therapist has affirmed that they are right and everybody else is wrong. There are people that are like that. I think it's a very small minority of people that go in therapy and that were manipulators and then come out, because most manipulators don't go to therapy. Like most narcissistic people with narcissistic personality disorders don't go into therapy. They don't think they need therapy, and if they do go into therapy, they normally will go to a high profile therapist because of their grandiosity. They can't just be with any therapist, right? They can't just work with anybody. It has to be somebody that is worth their salt. That's kind of the idea of a narcissistic person going to therapy. So you will find that that's a very small minority because there's a small minority of people in the population with NPD anyways. So going back to what the person said, that a question in the intake form should be, how do you deal with interpersonal conflict? I don't necessarily think it's necessary to deal with that, but that is a conversation that should and will come up if you're working with your therapist for a substantial length of time. 6 sessions, maybe not. It depends if interpersonal difficulties is the presenting issue. But if you're working with therapy minimum a year, which I recommend, anything less than that, I think you're just having nice patty sessions. You're not doing anything less than, and okay, you can do 6 months of therapy and do a lot of work, but you got to realize that 20 years, 15 years, 30, 40, 50 years of life is not going to be resolved or dealt with in 6 months of therapy. You don't even scratch the surface, let alone touch the surface, mate. You're not even on the surface. Yeah. So a minimum for me is 1 year to substantially say you've been in a therapeutic process, because some people like myself took 2 years before I revealed anything substantial to my therapist. So let alone, 1 year for some people like me was just, boy, my therapist tried. She long suffered. But what was very important for me taking from this video is the idea that therapists can be, maybe without knowing, they could be enabling people who out in society are one way. You have to understand, when you come into therapy, that's 1 hour of the week, unless you're in psychoanalysis and doing 3 hours of a week, 3 hours or 5 days a week, right? It's 1 hour a week. The majority of the rest of the time, you're outside in the real world. The way you are to your therapist is not the way you are outside in the real world, although it is the same way. Like the way you perceive, like for example, you know, some clients, without knowing, they act childish and childlike. When I say childish, I don't mean childish. Are you being childish? I mean like childlike in therapy, because they've what we call regressed to a younger state, right? So I could be speaking to a 30-year-old person who is now regressed to a younger state and is talking. I don't mean like, I'm talking like that, like I was a child. No, but they're just acting childish. They're acting like a child. They're doing, no, I don't want to talk about that. And you see this in grown adults, right? They're in a trauma response. It's not like they wouldn't behave like this outside. So I could be talking to CEOs who are big CEOs of multi-complex organizations, bossing people around, but in therapy dealing with their deep trauma, they regress to a 12-year-old. So that's why I'm saying that you're not going to be regressing to a 12-year-old in the boardroom, But the reality is the way in which you appear in the world will be somewhat on what we will see and understand and pull back in the session over a period of time. So, for example, I've had clients who I've perceived them to be very introverted and very shy, and they're like, "No, I'm the life of the party," And you're like, "Oh, that's not the imagination, the picture that I got from how we communicate." So something about how we communicate and how you present yourself here, I had a totally different picture to how you supposedly say you are outside. It was a big shock to find out that the person is very extroverted and very bubbly. That's not how the person presents in therapy. Whereas some people, it's consistent. Like I know, even though it took me 2 years because of my defenses, my extroverted personality, how I was evident in therapy. So I don't think there was a point in time where I said to my therapist, I was this way. And she's like, huh? Because that is how I kind of present in therapy at the core, if that makes sense. So let's go. Back.
Nina, I hope you haven't found my TikTok. But as therapy becomes destigmatized, it's led to a lot of people participating in it who just want to be able to put in their Hinge bio that they're in therapy and not actually do any of the real work. And listen, that's fine. Keep therapists in business, create space for yourself, but providing a bunch of people with the academic vocabulary to justify their own behavior at any cost in any context, it's creating a master manipulator generation. I fear we may be about to fly too close to the sun.
Okay, so I think the point that I like that she made is the fact that there are some people that literally do 3 months of therapy, and then when they when they meet you and you're talking, like I see it on Ready to Love, for example. Ready to Love is like a Black American dating show, and the most common line is, "I've done the work, I've done the work, I've done the work." I've gone to therapy. I've done the work. Then when you find out how long were you in therapy, 3 months. I've done 3 months to deal with 20 years of marriage and you've just divorced. Nah, sorry. Most people don't know, but me, you couldn't tell me that I meet you. You were in a relationship of any significance. You've broken up. It most likely was very traumatic and difficult and not the easiest thing. And you did 3 months of therapy, 6 months even, and you've done the work. I'm sorry. I don't know what work you've done. You just started the work. See, people are not aware of it because that person probably feels that they've done the work, but then you see how they present themselves on online on the show, and you realize that you ain't done the work, or you started the work. You need to continue the work, right? I've been in therapy for 9 years, and I'm going to continue. In all honesty, I'm not going to stop until my therapist passes on to the other side, and then at that point, I've got to consider do I find another therapist? That'd probably be quite hard. I wish my therapist was young just for this reason, so I could have her for like 30, 40 years. But by God's grace, she will last for another 10, 15 years, and that will be great. So I think that, yeah, obviously she's been hyperbolic about people putting their bios. But again, it's an example that you talk to people and somebody's like, I'm very self-aware. Have you gone therapy? No. I'm very self-aware. Have you gone therapy? Yeah. How long? 3 months. Or I only had 6. I've heard people say they've gone therapy. I'm like, okay, how long? 6 sessions. So let me say this. I'm not invalidating whether it's 1 session, 2 sessions, 10 sessions or more. What I am saying is that it's like me saying I've done martial arts. And what level you in? No, I just went for 6 sessions. You'd be like, okay, beginner. Like I didn't even get a belt, mate. It's like you went, but you didn't. Yeah, there's a big difference between I tasted therapy and I've engaged and I'm engaging in long-term substantial therapy to understand who I am so I can be the best version of myself. 2 totally different things from I went therapy for a couple of sessions. 2 different things. Well done. Congratulations. It is a very big step to even go therapy once, let alone more than 1 time. But please recognize there is a big difference from a few sessions, even a couple of months, to a significant process where you are going to therapy to deal with the underlying issues that you and everybody else has, and myself included, is absolutely essential. We understand. So talking to therapists now, because she's addressing therapists, right? Because what I'm understanding, what I'm seeing is that she's not talking about her therapist. She's saying that she's met people who, let's just call it how it is. They are an a-hole, right? And they are in therapy, and their a-hole has not reduced. And this is, let me be very honest with you. A therapist, maybe we don't want to admit it. And this is why I say we have to be very honest as practitioners. And when you see therapists there was a therapist who went viral the other day because she said she doesn't want to work with male therapists, right? People got onto her, but she feels threatened and she feels quite uncomfortable with some male clients that she has worked with. So, and I think therapists nowadays have become the new, I don't know, saints of, the new saints, and they can't express how they feel, because I see therapists saying when they say something, people get onto them, or they feel that people always get onto them. And this is an example. This person on TikTok who was also a client is giving an example of, there's many people that are in therapy and they're not changing. They are just becoming worse and they're just justifying their behavior. Somebody who is, I don't know, again, manipulative will be very, very a minor few. But what I would say is, let's say somebody is a user. Okay, yeah, let's say they use it. They suck up the energy of people, maybe unintentionally, and they go into therapy, right? And maybe after a while, people are kind of increasingly getting frustrated and rejecting them because they're tired of being used. They're tired of you constantly dependent on them. You're not standing on your own 2 feet and taking responsibility. You lack accountability. A therapist might come to that person. That person gets affirmed that there's nothing wrong, is you got to be interdependent, and if these people cannot be there for you, they're not good friends. So this person gets a real picture that people are not there for them. People only that people are trying to use them, and they're not seeing that they're the common denominator in their lives. So they might reject those earlier friends, because of therapy, meet new friends, continue that pattern of using people. Then a few friends also get annoyed, and then because they're like, oh, I went therapy, my therapist told me XYZ. Their usage behavior, their behavior where they draw on people's strengths and not give enough, right? So basically being quite selfish is not addressed, was not addressed in therapy. So what happens, understandably, is that behavior, that characteristic, or that trait remains the same and is justified based on their childhood experience. So if their childhood experience where they were highly independent, never asked for help, and then maybe for whatever reason in adulthood they have become quite dependent, right? A therapist might surmise from that, saying it's actually good that you lean on people because you don't want to be too hyper independent, because you was when you were younger, but these people around you don't appreciate you, and so your behavior is justified. Rather, there should be balance, and a good therapist might be able to see that they were very hyper independent, and maybe they're now very dependent on people because of something. There's a reason for that, a reason for like a kind of turn in behavior, but people are quite put off by that. And if a good therapist who is using themselves to understand the client, which we call transference, thank you, Freud, might feel, so in a situation like this, if a client is very clingy, yeah, I might in the transference, and every therapist will pick up transference very different to them, but I might in the transference feel like, oh, this client just irritates me. This really irritates me. What's going on? So in supervision, I will speak to my supervisor, who is a qualified therapist as well with a bit more experience, and we'll basically talk back and forth, and we'll end up working out that in the transference, me feeling annoyed by this client and wanting the client to push away is maybe what they induce in other people. They engender a response in others to push them away because something about them is too needy, and the people that feel that neediness feel like it's too much. It will begin to make you understand that client. So then what ends up happening is in therapy, you might subtly say, I sometimes get a sense that you feel too much for people, and it makes you really sad because you realize that when you reach out to people, people reject you. How does that feel like? And then you go on and you go on and you go on, and then the person might say, "Yeah, people tell me that I'm clingy." So what does clingy mean to you? What does that mean? What does that look like? And let's talk about what clingy is and what clingy is not. And then essentially, hopefully, over a period of time, they begin to use their own resources and stand on their own 2 feet and depend on themselves and become interdependent rather than highly dependent on others. And then they'll be able to maybe apologize to friends who they've used, or if those friends have gone, make new friends with new boundaries. That's what should happen in therapy. It shouldn't be that a person comes in being a user and leaves being a user. The therapist ain't done no work. And I can't blame the therapist because I don't really know how that happens. But maybe it does happen because some people come to play in therapy. Some people don't like to listen. Look, being a therapist isn't easy. I'm very fortunate that most of my clients, even though they're defended and they listen to me, but some clients don't listen. So you can say something, you can be very subtle, you can be thinking creatively. I should say this in this way and that in that way, and they'll go, no, that's not it. That's not it. It's very difficult if you have a client in therapy that's constantly saying no to whatever intervention, whatever suggestion you say is a constant no, 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 no. Some clients have difficult so I'm trying to see. Oh, stop sharing. Oh, okay, that's what I was like trying to get back to the size of the camera. Some people have difficult personalities. Let me be very honest with you, right? Trauma is so interesting because trauma can show up in, somebody can have similar trauma but show up in different ways. So somebody can go through sexual assault, and one person is very pleasant and very soft and gets scared easily. Another person's very hard and very aggressive, right? They both went through similar abuses, but it's presented very differently. And a lot of people might prefer the more sullen, the more subdued person than the one that's a bit more aggressive. You see it with a lot of Black kids, right? In school in the UK, and I think it's the same, unfortunately, most likely in the Western world, that Black kids are more likely to be excluded. It's very clear that when a Black child is struggling, sometimes they're just told that they're aggressive. When I was growing up, I had certain struggles, and I don't know, I probably was told I was aggressive, but what I remember was I was never seen as vulnerable. My vulnerability was never seen because I didn't always cry. I cried. I just never cried in front of teachers because I did not find it helpful. But I was constantly crying at home. I was crying at home every day. But because I didn't cry, at school in front of a teacher, they couldn't see my vulnerability. Maybe I was like this. Maybe I was like whatever. And again, maybe teachers need to learn, and maybe they are learning now, learn the childhood development, understanding that if a child is doing this and doing that, there's a tantrum, they're defensive, there's something is happening that is presenting a certain way. Of course, if a child is pushing and being aggressive, it's very hard to be like, oh, what's really going on for you? Well, I guess it depends on the age of the child. If a child is like 17, you might be less sympathetic to a child who is like 11, who's 9 or 10. But you do find the adultification, especially of Black women, but also of Black men. The adultification of Black people is a real and true thing. So as therapists, we need to do more. And another video is going to emphasize, again, a very similar point. There's going to be 2 discussion points within the next video. I think it's really important that as therapists, we understand the wider perspective, the social environment a person's in, and recognize that the person, you're responsible to that client, but I feel like I'm responsible to make sure that I put my client back better than they left, better than they've come in, and they're able to function in society. I am not trying to make my client be so self-confident that they come across arrogant outside. I'm not trying to get my client to they came in with lots of relationships, some not healthy, some healthy, and then by the end of it, they've ended all their relationships because they were not able to discriminate the healthy ones from the non-healthy ones. Like, we need to, as therapists, help our clients to judge righteously, to judge well, to discriminate between a person who uses them and doesn't, the person who manipulates them and doesn't. There's no point a person coming in saying they feel manipulated by people. Is it everyone? No. Then it's not people by some people. Okay. And then they leave out basically alone because everybody that was around them is manipulative, when they came in saying that actually only a few people are. And that's what we've agreed and recognized, that it's not every single person, but there is quite a few people in your life that are manipulative. And these are the reasons why. Then once you break down the reasons why that they attract manipulative people, that they fall for manipulation, that they themselves, a lot of people that are manipulated can also be manipulative because that's all they see. That's what they're used to. But there are people around them that are not manipulative, but maybe they don't give as much attention to or time to, What about those? Are there people around? So, for example, a question I would ask people is like, do they have friends? Because I think it's really important to know that, does this person in front of me, is he or she able to speak about their feelings to other friends? Some people are not, that they've got good friends, but I'm not ready to share with them. It's not them, it's me. Some people, I don't have people. I don't think I can share with them. It's very different. You can have friends and they can be amazing. And that if you share with them, they'll be there for you, but you don't, for your reasons, right? There's a difference between you have friends that is just surface level, right? The effect is the same in the sense where you don't share with the friends, but the quality is different. And one person actually has good friends that they think are reliable, and another is just like, no, I would never share with them. So let's look at the next video. I think if I share the screen, I really rate people that are just so good at. Okay. So that was that. Let's do this video.
I ghosted my therapist, and let me tell you why. For context, my mum passed away last year, and after I had buried her, specifically 2 weeks after, my friends basically held an intervention to kind of go through all the things they didn't really like about me. And as fair as that was, I was obviously going through a lot at the time, but in a fast and desperate attempt to fix these things, I decided to go to therapy. I wanted to be a better friend, but my therapist would just validate me and tell me, no, you're not these things that your friends are telling you that you are, which was really hard for me to believe. I couldn't believe that. Plus the fact that I felt like I was talking to a friend in therapy, but then at the end I always had to pay. And I was like, oh yeah, this is literally someone's job. Was it wrong of me to ghost her? I don't know. I don't know if I should go back. Let me know.
So, hey, whoever's in the chat, whoever is here, say hello. It's good to know. Encourage me, make me feel good. Say, hey, what's happening? So there's 2 things in this. I'm going to address the therapist bit towards the end, and then the friendship thing, because that can be seen as a slightly separate topic that's related. So again, she said that she went to therapy because she was told that she was a bad friend, and she felt that the therapist affirmed her behavior. Let me. I want to make sure I get it right. What did the therapist do?
Like, guys tell me, no, you're not these things that your friends are telling you, friend. But my therapist would just validate me and tell me, no, you're not these things that your friends are telling you.
So she felt validated. So she was validated, right? You're not these things that the therapist, your friends tell you. And then she also said that she felt that she was talking to the friend, she was paying the money. So there was kind of like this thing of like, yeah. Okay. So let me say this. A few things. Now, this goes back to my point. Yeah. Let me give you a beautiful illustration. I call it beautiful. Yeah, I call it beautiful. Apologies for that interruption. Okay, sorry for that. Apologies. Apologies. That's one thing when you have your WhatsApp open. Somebody's just responded. I'm just like, before the person goes offline again. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so the therapist, she says that the therapist validated her, so told that she was not a bad person. She felt like the therapist was a friend. She was paying money, and I guess she ghosted her. So it's 4 key points. Yeah, so 4 key points that occurred and happened. Cool. So with that being said, let's talk about it. This is the point that I'm making. Let me give a beautiful illustration. Yeah, let's give this example. So let's say I go into therapy and I'm a people pleaser, and I feel like a lot of people take I'm doing this actually because I think I'm tired. So sometimes when people are doing this, when they're speaking about traumatic or sensitive or difficult feelings or emotions, this is a kind of a way. It's like a soothing mechanism. You see a lot of kids with learning difficulties use this and stuff like that. I realized that, why am I doing that? I'm talking about, but I'm tired. There's a way of kind of keeping myself awake and focused because I haven't slept much. Pardon me. So if you wonder why I'm doing that, that's the reason why. But I'll try to do it below so it's not too distracting. Okay, so if I go into therapy and I'm a people pleaser, what tends to happen is that when you go into therapy, and you begin to work on yourself, you begin to set boundaries and become, assertive with your no. The first thing is to learn how to say no, preserve your energy, only do things that benefit you. The typical things that you hear, right? I don't always give that type of advice, but that's just typical things that you hear people when they say, I looked out for myself, I put myself first. Okay, cool. What tends to happen is that person decides to go on a no spree. So everybody gets told no. Everybody, right? Now, within that person's relationship, they would have potentially some people, could be friends, family, that do not take advantage of their people-pleasing abilities. And they will even have some people that have never asked them for anything, right? And let's say during the time that you are saying your no spree, they ask you for something, they reach out. And because you're on your saying no, I'm being assertive, I'm keeping my boundaries, you say no, and then that person maybe reacts. And I don't say reacts, I mean that they respond in kind by maybe just not talking to you anymore, they withdraw. Basically, the relationship changes, you're no longer what you were. Then you go to therapy, and then it's validated that you see they weren't good friends for you. Your therapist might say, well, if they don't understand this is your time and your season to say no, then they're not good friends. You're like, yeah, it's true. When actually, the way I work and some of my colleagues work is I would say, well, in your journey of saying no, is every single person around you a person that has taken advantage of your people pleasing tendencies? No, okay, it hasn't. Who is it? Is it your mom? Is it your sister? Like, let's actually name the people you feel that are a certain way, because if not everybody is that, you need to be able to discriminate those that are, you know, using you. And some people, when I say that, I don't always mean people doing it consciously. Yeah, a lot of things are unconscious, but you get the feeling, you're left with the feeling of being used. Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And as soon as you do it for them, they leave you, and then they come back to you again, and they leave you and come back to you. That's usually, you feel used, right? Used goods. So when you have relationships that are like that, sometimes not to that extreme, but you have elements of that. We have that sometimes with our friends, with our families, you know, with our parents, with our siblings. You know, if you're the caretaker and always there for people and doing all of this, but when it's your time, when it's your turn, nobody turns up for you. You end up having your own birthday, but you plan everybody else's birthdays. You know, hearing those examples, right? What tends to happen is that in moments when we're going through these periods of change and transition and metamorphosis, we don't look at we paint everybody with the same brush, right? A good therapist will ensure that you only are doing that to the key people that you've identified, or that we together have identified. Because if you, like in my example, say turn the person down who has never asked you for anything, but this is their first time, you've got to recognize that they're going through their own thing. So now let's go to that person, the person who reached out to you, and this is the first time they've reached out to you. They don't know you're going through this metamorphosis journey of saying no. They just know that in this moment they needed you, and their friend couldn't be there for them, and they have their own trauma response of being rejected. You know, they feel like every time they ask for help, they reject. So they're hyper independent, and maybe their therapist tells them, reach out to your friends, pick a few friends who you know that are supportive, that will do it, and then they choose you, they reach out to you, and you say no, then that confirms to them why they should not, they should remain by themselves, they shouldn't rely on people. They start to look at you different because they know that they've been there for you when you've asked, and the one time that you asked, are not there for them, right? But how could that have been avoided? Well, you're going through your metamorphosis. There are people in your life that don't use you. You can tell them, like, guys, you guess what? You know, I'm going through this change. I'm now saying no to people. So if you ask me something and I might say no to you, ask me again. It could just be my natural response, because I'm trying to practice saying no to everybody, but I'm aware that not every single person, you know, takes advantage of me. Or you may not say that, you know, you may not tell people that you're going through this process, but when that person asked, you would say, oh, I don't think this person has actually ever asked me. This is their first time. Wow. Okay. They were not included in the people that we identified with my therapist that, you know, take advantage of my people pleasing abilities. So actually, let me hear the person out and think about it, and then, you know, make a decision. But at least let me not just say no indiscriminately because I'm on my no spree. I'm on my assertive, my protect my boundaries tree. Let me actually see, is this a request that I can do? Is this a request coming from a place where I don't feel like I'm being pulled to do it because I want to please them? That could be totally different. And even if you still say no, you can say, girl, whoever, guy, I'm saying no only because I don't know how to say yes right now. I've gone from saying yes to everything to learning to say no. I just need a bit of balance. I'm not yet balanced. I'm going to one extreme to another. Give me a few moments. That could be days. It could be weeks. Let me just get to a point where I feel like I'm able to say yes to some and no to others. That person might still feel bad, but maybe with that context, they go to therapy, and a good therapist will say, okay, well, they've explained to you, it seems that they're going through their own process. Give them grace. You know, they've explained to you why they've said no. It's really just because they need to go through their own process right now. You can reach out to them, give them another chance, and tell them that you're going to, you know, it was really hard for you to do this, but you don't want to use that one no to stop them ever asking you for help, because they understand that you're going through their process, right? The person might still feel hurt, the person might still feel rejected, but is able to understand your reasoning because you're going through your process, I'm going through mine. We will eventually meet in the middle once we get to a certain equilibrium, to a certain homeostasis. Do you understand what I'm saying? Instead, what we do have is my therapist essentially told me, no, you're not there for me, because when I ask you for things, you never do it. But if you ask me, I'm always there. The same one would say, I'm tired of being people pleasing. I'm tired of giving yes, 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 and never saying no. You got to respect my no. It's my time. It's my this. Essentially, therapists are working so much in silos, yeah? And because therapy is not like the law, where one lawyer, even though you're working with your lawyer in a silo, there's an overall law that you're working according to. So unless you're lawyers just a bit weird. They are within the law. Where therapy is not like that. There are different theories. There's from psychoanalysis to transactional analysis that I am, to integrative, to person-centered, to CBT, to Gestalt, to Jungian, and more. There's so many different theories that sometimes interlink and connect and then diverge, right? That the way I'm working with one client can be totally different to the way I'm working, another therapist works with another client. So at all, I'm not saying that I'm the right, but what I do hope is that therapists who listen to me, who want to become therapists, and clients, please understand that when you go into therapy, right, we have to recognize that there's a world that the client goes back into, and they need to, you may not agree, some people say you don't have to fit in. I don't mean fit in that way. I mean they need to function in the world. You can't create a monster. You can't create a person who was loving and caring, and then when they go out, they're standoffish because they want to protect their energy so much that they're no longer a loving and caring person. I came into therapy genuinely a happy, extroverted, ambitious woman. I was scared that that would change. I've come out of therapy a happy, extroverted, ambitious woman. But now what drives me is different. I'm not driven by this insatiable desire to prove something. I'm driven by the desire to please God. I'm not driven by the desire to from discontentment. I'm driven by wanting to serve. You know, the positions the outcome may be the same, but the reasons behind the outcomes are different. And I think that is absolutely important to ensure that when you're in therapy, your personality is not changing, but what built your personality. So the reason why you might be, I was very blunt back in the day, right? I don't know if I'm as blunt. People say I am sometimes, but I know I'm more surgical. Right, I went from surgical to not being blunt at all to being the opposite of blunt, which is maybe you know, to, I think I'm quite surgical. I'm more considered. You know, sometimes I gotta find the line and balance between just, you know, being truthful and being honest and just saying it. And then if I say it wrong, apologize rather than saying I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to get it wrong because I don't want to, you know, that I didn't like that when I was told I was blunt because I was hurting people. There's one time I didn't care and I was like whatever, and I'm going to tell the truth. You can't accept the truth. The typical kind of like defense to when people are blunt. Then I start to realize that I'm hurting people, and it's not nice. And yeah, I should think about being surgical. So that's that part. Now, there was another part that she talked about that let me just play the first part about friendship. That was quite interesting. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let's go back to what she said. She said that she ghosted the therapist, yeah. So what I would say to that is that ghosting, when people ghost, people don't understand that's attachment response. That's a communication style. We've debated ghosted without recognizing that it's based on potentially trauma. It's based on attachment styles. Somebody ghosting is somebody avoiding conflict, is somebody avoiding difficult conversations. Usually what I say in the first session with a new client is that I'm going to disappoint you as a therapist. You have to understand that therapy is not easy, that there's going to be times where you hate me, that you're angry at me. There's going to be times that I remind you of somebody in your past, good or bad. There is going to be times that I miss you, I don't hear you, and you're not going to like it. And that is therapy. That's when you come back and we deal with that, because that means something. The reason why you were so angry that I missed you was because you feel discarded by your family, you feel abandoned by your family. So that was so excruciating when you felt missed by me. That is therapy. What tends to happen is that when people get to these pivotal moments in therapy, they withdraw. It gets too much. They get uncomfortable. They look for and find another therapist. There are people right now sitting here listening to me, going from one therapist to another. They're not going to get help, because there's that when clients go to one A&E to another because they want to go into the psychiatric ward, right? And because we don't share systems across the different NHS trusts in the UK, so there's sometimes somebody can go to 5 or 6 local authority A&Es. So A&Es in different boroughs, shall I say, from Hackney, Islington to Newham, to Waltham Forest, to Havering and Havering, to Camden. And maybe it will only get to a point where maybe one of the professionals eventually called a borough and found that, oh, this person came yesterday. And they go, okay, let me check some of the neighboring boroughs. And then you literally find out the person's gone to 6 A&Es, 6 hospitals in the past 6 days. Now, usually there's time because that person might not have time. See, that nurse or that social worker didn't have time and doesn't always have time to sit there and say, let me find out if this person is known. Now, that does happen, but you might only do one trust because that person lives in Southwark, so you're from Slam. I'm not going to think of, let me call Southwest London, and just in case David also popped up there. We don't do that unless there's an indication. But the reason why I'm saying that is there are clients that actually, there's many clients that do that. They do that because they want a particular outcome that really isn't beneficial for them. We've said no in this place, so they know that they can go somewhere else and nobody knows them there, and they're probably going to get that outcome. Unless when it usually only happens when the whole NHS, like the body, the NHS, kind of do a wide thing where this particular client, like this is the plan. Everyone follow the plan because it's really not helpful if this person can go to 6 boroughs to basically get what they want, and some boroughs do it and some don't. So, mind you, there are some people that do that with therapists. Yeah. Oh, I just didn't get on with this therapist. I didn't get on. And I guess sometimes it's a very subjective experience. It's not always a hard fast that this person was that person was that. It just doesn't always work out. So I'm saying all of this to say this. She said, is it wrong to ghost? I would say that if you felt that the therapy wasn't working, you should speak about that in therapy. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Oh, you don't want to hurt the therapist's feelings. And you might do. The therapist won't show it to you, but you might do. But it's necessary for your healing, because it is imperative that if you most likely ghosted your therapist, you probably display that type of behavior amongst other relationships. And that could be a big red flag and issue for yourself, that maybe you withdraw very easily when you're uncomfortable, when you're discontent, when you're not happy. You're not somebody who confront things. You're somebody who puts everything under the carpet. You're somebody who disappears. We've all got friends that disappear and then come back and expect us to be the same, be where we were when you just dropped us or when you just withdrew. Ringing the bell. We always talk about ghosting in romantic relationship, but people ghosting friends all the time. And the people that ghost feel like they have a right to ghost, and the people that are being ghosted feel like they feel offended by that. And there needs to be some common ground between the two, because you just see back and forth some people not understanding that those that are ghosted are hurt, but those that do the ghosting maybe need time to heal. But communication solves a lot of things. That people can just communicate and say, look, I got a ghost. You ain't going to see me for a while, but I love you. But I just need some time to compress, to consolidate, to essentially just hibernate. The money she said she paid, it's just part of the conversation. Like when you're paying for therapy and you don't think you're getting what you want to be getting, or you don't think it's working or as good as you think, you start thinking about the money. Like, right, 60 quid, boy, could have been gone for something else. I could have gotten some nice oxtail rice and peas jollof rice for £60. I could have got a nice pair of shoes for £60. You start to think about, what could I spend that £60 on? Instead, I'm spending £60 on to talk about my issues and feel sad. So let's now talk about this is where we're going to talk about the first bit, because she did mention and a bit that I thought was quite interesting. So let's hear the rest of it, and then we'll start again from the beginning.
That you are, which was really hard for me to believe. I couldn't believe that. Plus the fact that I felt like I was talking to a friend in therapy, but then at the end I always had to pay. And I was like, oh yeah, this is literally someone's job. Was it wrong of me to ghost her? I don't know. I don't know if I should go back. Let me know.
So when she mentioned she was talking to a friend, I don't know if it's I'm talking to a friend and the money wasn't worth it. Like the friend, like she felt that the therapist, sometimes you can feel like you're a professional you're working with is trying to be too relatable, like be too over famous, like, like you're a professional. We might be similar outside of this role, but we're in this role. Yeah. So maybe it was that, or she genuinely meant that. I guess I would say that in the transference, she felt like friend vibes, and this person reminded her of a friend, and she began to really see this therapist as a friend and realized like, right, I'm paying a friend. So it could have been more coming from her, how she the therapist reminded her of like friend, and it became difficult for her to see her as the therapist. So yeah, who knows? I just realized that you guys, I didn't share the screen. Oh, so funny. I think it's funny when you see others do that and then you do it yourself. So let's start again.
I ghosted my therapist, and let me tell you why. For context, my mum passed away last year, and after I had buried her, specifically 2 weeks after, my friends basically held an intervention to kind of like go through all the things they didn't really like about me. And as fair as that was, I was obviously going through a lot at the time, but in a fast and desperate attempt to fix these things, I decided to go to therapy. I wanted to be a better friend, but my therapist would just validate me and tell me, no, you're not these things that your friends are telling you that you are, which was really hard for me to believe. I couldn't believe that. Plus the fact that I felt like I was talking to a friend in
So yeah, very interesting, right? Very, 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 very interesting. Okay, so what would my thoughts be on this? Had a discussion with a friend about this. I feel like it's very hard to judge until you hear both sides, because it is easy to listen to this and react because of how you would feel if maybe a loved one, passed, particularly your mum, and if you've got a really good relationship with your mother or parent or whoever, you kind of put yourself in the shoes, thinking it's just atrocious. It's absolutely unthinkable that friends will speak to you 2 weeks after the death of your mother and you're grieving. But it's hard to know the context because there was a 650, less than 1 minute video. What did she present? How can I put this? When people pass, everybody goes into grieving, but everybody presents it very differently. There are people that we see who the person passes on a Monday, they're back at work on a Tuesday and acting like normal. Now, and I say normal, I'm not talking about like, yeah, they're acting like nothing happened. And even though you got to recognize that your friends are not therapists, so we might know now about the 5, 6 stages of grief. But just because we know these things, it doesn't mean that when in reality people do the opposite of what we think. Somebody dies, there should be crying, there should be tears, there should be a period of time where it's like, okay, it's clear that you're grieving, but everybody's grief is different. So if your grief is different, if your grief is, going to the club the next week, which you see people do that. Same way that people get divorced and then they go mad, or they break up and they go in a mad kind of mad swing because they haven't, they've been locked in a relationship. And then some people don't. Some people want to go right back into a just one relationship, right? Everybody responds to things differently. So maybe she was normal, whatever that looks like. She did not seem like she was sad and upset. So they didn't see it as a, oh my God, your mother just died. They saw it as, okay, well, she's seeming to be okay. If she was Muslim, Muslims bury very quickly. So the mother could have been buried already. And to be very honest with you, I would say this: when is the right time? We might obviously say 6 months. Some people might say 6 months is too soon. Some people, because I'm telling you, she said 6 months after mother's died. Some people will still say that's too soon. People are grieving. It can take years to. People will grieve all their life. So this is the point that I'm making, right? How long is the mourning period and how long is the grieving period? Like, what is it? When is it okay to do this? Is it insensitive by just what she said? Yes, but we need to head the other side. Now, on one hand as well, she said friends, not friends, to tell her, she said it in her own words, what they don't like about her. It may not have been that, it may have been things that we're just not happy with, and we want our relationship to be better, right? Because again, the perception that she can give is everything is wrong with me. A couple of videos ago, I talked about the Tyler family from Love and Marriage DC, and there was a family intervention. And if you watch that without a trained eye, you'd be looking at the child Tyler, little Tyler, 26 years old, think, why is my guy crying and throwing a tantrum when his family have done an intervention and they're telling him in his face that they love him and they want him to be better and that we should go therapy, and he's taken this to be, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. Right. And I gave my therapist breakdown. You can see that. I gave my reason for why I think that is the case. So if there was no videos and he was to describe the intervention, he could say, "Oh, my family was against me, they ganged up on me." But when you watch it, you wouldn't see that. So it's really important that this may have been a conversation that they had maybe during the funeral after her mother's death. She was still being not nice, in the words of what her friends may have said, and they couldn't take it, and they've done the funeral, they're about to do the funeral, and they want to support their friend, but they can't support their friend in the way she's acting. They need to tell her that, we know you've gone through something, but please fix up, because we're really finding it hard to support you. Right? Some people might say, no, it's still wrong. That's fine. For you, it's still wrong. I can't make a judgment of that until I hear this other story. Yes, do I think 2 weeks after somebody's mother has passed, forget that, because somebody's brother, somebody's friend, we're assuming, most people are reacting because it's the mother, and we naturally assume that, as she's a woman, she probably is close to her mother. Many people are not. But still, just because they're not close doesn't mean that they wouldn't be upset or sad. Grief is very tricky, and that's why it's about just trying your best and saying, look, let me know at any point in time that I am, not doing what you need. I'm not giving you what you need. Sometimes people don't even know what they need. Yeah, to tell the truth, people don't even know what they need. So the reason why I say this is because I think we have to be careful to cast judgment on that and just say, okay, that's very interesting. I wouldn't do it like that. Then say, oh my God, those friends are dead wrong. You should have dropped them. No. She just said that she even agreed that maybe she's not a good friend. This girl could be a terrible friend. Bad things happen to terrible people. Murderers lose loved ones as well. And you might see somebody who has been has murdered somebody. I don't know if you can say that on YouTube. He has done, has harmed somebody, and they lose a loved one. And let's say you don't know that they have, you feel sorry for them. But the moment somebody tells you, "Do you know what the person did? Their person," you might be like, I don't feel sorry for them anymore. Ain't that human, right? Naturally human. You will see somebody crying and be upset. Then when you find out the character of that person, the way you feel less sorry for that person. So I'm not saying that we should feel less sorry for her because she supposedly is a horrible person to her friends, supposedly. It's more that there's a context that she has herself somewhat admitted that, well, I don't know if she agreed that she was a terrible friend or she wanted to rectify the relationship and salvage it. So and said, okay, therapy will help me identify, am I a terrible friend? Oh, let me say this point. With therapists naturally so just one second, it's still going. Therapists naturally like to counteract negativity. What do I mean? If you say, oh, I'm so horrible, I'm a nasty person, a therapist will, might say like, oh no, you shouldn't say that about yourself, because we are trying to challenge the critical parent, the critical voice in your head, right? Now, again, an experienced therapist, especially in the first few sessions, I won't counteract a lot of negative things you're saying, because I need to know where it's coming from. I need to understand, the context of that, because I'm aware that I could be speaking to somebody who is not nice. And if they're being told that they are horrible, they actually might be horrible. There might be a reason for the horribleness. There's reasons for it, which is why you're in therapy, but the behavior they display is horrible. And there's a way that you can get your client to be accountable that this was not a nice thing. That doesn't mean I'm not a nice person, but this was not a nice thing. If you've got, look, there are people in therapy who are the cheaters. They have cheated on their spouse, on their partner. They're in therapy. They are now so let's just do a typical example. A man is cheating on their wife. They now want to divorce their wife and get with the mistress that they're cheating with, right? And maybe the wife is stopping him from seeing the kids. Or forget that. The wife wants the house, but he wants to keep the house because he wants to bring his mistress in who's pregnant. And while the kids and his wife are older. Now, not because I'm a woman, because if that was a woman or a man, that's outrageous. I'm sitting here. No, there is judgment. To me, yeah, personally, I don't know if I could work with that because I think my values will show through, because I just can't work with an adulterer who is not remorseful for the adulteration. Like, if you can't see that that's wrong and you've damaged your family and you're starting a new relationship on unhealthy grounds, I don't know if I could work with that. Right? There's some therapists that will work with that. And will affirm that behavior. That husband may not feel they did anything wrong, because there are cheating husbands, there are cheating wives, there are people there are racists that go to therapy that are affirmed. There could be a racist that will be in therapy right now who doesn't make it obvious that they're racist. You could and they might just talk about how there's certain people in my workplace that are just so difficult. And maybe the person never asks their color and just assumes that they're white. This could be a white person. It could even be the other way around. It could be a black person and you're talking about a white person and the person does not even know you're talking about the opposite color. They talk, because most of the time you're not going to ask, is that person black or white? You're taking the characteristics, not knowing that this person is basically saying that they are racist or they don't like the person because of the color of the skin, but they never mention that. They just talk about how difficult these groups of people are. Obviously, there's a way of making it obvious, but you can say, oh, there's got this one colleague who I just find totally inappropriate and just very aggressive. And because you may not be sitting there thinking they're racist, let me ask you their color and what makes you think they're aggressive and why would you use that word for that person. You're taking it as this is a person, an individual that they're having an interpersonal difficulty with. And when they tell you things, you say, oh, that sounds reasonable why you'd think that. So maybe they're jealous of you. You hear that, oh, maybe they're jealous of you, maybe because you just got a promotion, they applied for the same job and you didn't get it, not knowing. Oh, what an amazing context. So imagine as a therapist, yeah, this is what happens. A white person comes to you and tells you, "Oh, there's a subordinate in my workplace who, is really making me have a difficult time. I just recently got promoted over them. They also applied, and I think they're a bit jealous of me." But maybe the situation really is that this is a black person and a white person. That black person was more experienced. Everybody thought they're going to get the job. They didn't get the job. You out of nowhere got the job because you were pally with this person. You went to the pub with them. And you're aware of your inadequacy. You're aware that you're not really suited for the job, but you got it, and fair enough, you accepted the position, and you feel threatened by that person. And because everybody else in the workplace also kind of feels like you shouldn't have gotten the job, rather than you seeing that, being truthful and admitting that yeah, maybe I got this job through, I got this job through licking the A, they say licking the ears. People can't see that. They can't admit that. They won't admit that. And then they'll go therapist, give a totally different picture or good picture that they perceive. And the therapist will affirm that person's jealous when actually it's racism. Or maybe not they are being racist, the recruitment practices were racist, or the recruitment practice was unfair. It's not racist, it was unfair because you gave this person based on you being in the pub, chit-chatting and got close, rather than based on the job description, who better fulfilled that, and it was the other person who happened to be black that applied. The reason I'm saying all that just to say that it may not be racism, it could be that. There could be many reasons that occurred, but that manager only gives it one perception to the therapist. So the therapist can only say, oh, from what you're saying, it does sound like maybe that, sounds reasonable to say that she's jealous. So you can see how certain behaviors don't change, don't move on. We've had managers that are terrible, and then we hear that they're in therapy a year later, they're still terrible. You're thinking, bruv, what's therapy doing for you? Because, mate, you're still a terrible manager. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think if there's any questions, put it in the chat box. What do you think? Like, what's your initial thoughts when you see the video about, I guess, the first video where she talks about, I guess, people coming into therapy with bad behavior and coming out of therapy with bad behavior. And in the second video, talking about the fact that she went to therapy and she felt like her behavior was validated and affirmed rather than challenged, and she didn't change and she ghosted her therapist. Like, what's your thoughts? You know, does therapy work for you? Can therapy work for you? Do you think therapy can work for everybody? Do you think everybody should go therapy? Like, what are your thoughts in the comments? Let me know, and I shall see you in the next video. See you in the next video, yo.